Hey guys, ETJ Writes here. So today we're gonna talk about some books I've been reading, just kind of ramblings on things I've been enjoying. And this is gonna be part one of a two-part series, so look out for part two sometime later on. But this is part one because I usually read more than one book at a time, and I can go on for hours about just one book. So if we're talking about two books and keeping it short, we're gonna have to split it up. So that's what I'm doing. So today we're gonna talk about some books I'm reading. I'm also going to at some point be talking about the book I'm reading right now for an author friend of mine, E.S. Barrison. She just released her debut novel, The Mistkeeper's Apprentice. So I've been eagerly following that journey of that book, and I'm so excited that it's out in the world now. I've just started it, but again, I'm going to save my thoughts for a separate video. Okay, so let's talk about some of the books I'm reading. I always try to support indie authors, so I generally have a couple by indie authors in my catalog, but I also have some by traditional authors, usually stuff I've picked up at yard sales, old books, things like that. So let's see, if we start with some of the indie authors that I am reading this month. Yes, I've been reading this one book called The Sisters of Ashford, and I haven't gotten that far yet, but I'm really excited about it so far. It features these three sisters whose brother, or two brothers I think, were taken by their enemies, and they have been left behind, and they live in this castle. I want to say it's based off of Irish culture because the main character's name is Evelyn, but it's not spelled how you'd think Evelyn would be spelled. Let's see, if I can find it. It's spelled E-I-B-H-L-I-N, and I did have to look up how to pronounce that. So again, E-I-B-H-L-I-N. That's the, I believe, Irish, but it could be Scottish, but Gaelic spelling of the name Evelyn, or Eflin, I think is better how it's pronounced. But it's like an Irish, traditional Irish name, and it's took me a while to wrap my brain around saying Evelyn every time I looked at that word, and I actually got my voice, it's text-to-speech, there we go, my text-to-speech program that I have on my phone, and I do have a video about how to make your phone do that for you, but I managed to get it to say the pronunciation correctly so it wasn't completely mangling it every time it came across it. But anyway, what the story is about, like I said, these three young women have been left behind when their brothers get attacked, and the one girl, Evelyn, she's just gotten married, but she's always been interested in sword fighting and things like that. She's going to be part of, I forget what it's called, but like the metal or something like that, where her father, who is the king, has these trained warriors, and you can see that the story is going to take a direction where she's going to join them and hopefully help her brothers be saved. Now it says the Sisters of Inishford, and of course we have more than one sister. So we've got Evelyn, who's the oldest, she's just gotten married. We've got Brianna, who is a really sweet girl. She really, really wants to get married as well. But there is a problem. The man that she really, really liked and was starting to fall for turns out to be a scoundrel. There's more spoilery stuff to that situation, but I can't really give that away. But he turns out to be a scoundrel, and Evelyn actually has quite a bad experience with him that leaves her very, very shaken, and then she becomes, I think it's agoraphobic, is that the right word, when you're afraid to leave your house? But she's afraid to leave her room because this guy slipped past the castle defenses, slipped past everybody. She's afraid to leave her room, she's afraid to leave the castle, and so actually where I am in the story, she's just getting to the point where her parents have kind of tricked her into leaving, because they're like, if we don't get her outside, she is just going to wither away. And you can argue back and forth whether or not that's the right thing to do for somebody who's in that situation, but for her in this story, we will see if that actually turns out to be true, because there's some other spoilery stuff that I don't really want to get into and ruin the story, but she may find that her fears of leaving the house are not unjustified. So everything is connected in a story. We'll see how that happens. Then we have the third sister, and oh goodness, I've forgotten her name. It's Cassidy, there we go. I wanted to say Catherine, I'm like, that's not right. Cassidy. By the time I get to the end of the story, I will remember everybody's names, but sometimes it takes me a while, especially if there's a large cast of characters. In this one, we have the three sisters, we've got the king, we've got the queen, we've got the husband of the girl, we've got the one guy who likes Brianna, we've got the nursemaid to the youngest girl, Cassidy. Quite a lot of main characters, or secondary to the main characters, and it's gonna just take me a while to get my brain wrapped around all of those. But anyway, Cassidy's the youngest. She doesn't quite have the same concerns, cares, or worries that her older sisters have. And her nursemaid was put in jail because she belongs to their enemy kingdom, and there was enough suspicious stuff going on that the king was like, no, we're not going to risk it. So he puts her in jail, and Cassidy spends quite a good bit of time trying to break her out. It's actually a clever little plan. It gets foiled pretty quickly, but the queen is fairly understanding, and she loves her daughter, so she's going to try and do what's best for her. So that's the Sisters of Inishford. Like I said, I haven't gotten through very far yet, but let me show you all what the cover looks like, and there you go. I don't actually have a physical copy of this book. It's just on my Kindle. But that's what that looks like. It's got the three sisters there, and they are going to, at some point, I guess, save their brothers who have been kidnapped by their rival kingdom and are being held ransom. The world building is pretty interesting too, so I'm excited to learn more about that. Like I said, that's an indie author, Jessica Monahan. Again, you can, if you rewind, you can look at the name on the book cover, and I will try to link some to her Instagram, social media, stuff like that in the description below. She's a really sweet author. I've enjoyed following her on Instagram, and I'm enjoying reading her book. The next one I want to talk about, and I'll probably talk about this in the next one too, my next video, is Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth. I can never remember if it's Lim or Lynn. Hang on, let me look at the cover for this one. It is Lim. For some reason, my brain just doesn't remember whether it's an M or an N at the end. But Elizabeth Lim, Spin the Dawn. This is a beautiful book cover. I only have the audiobook and ebook version, but I did get the chance to hold it in my hands when I went to a bookstore, and at some point I'll put that picture somewhere. But it's a really, really pretty book cover, and that's pretty much the only reason I picked it up. But again, people have described this book as a mix between Project Runway and Mulan, and I definitely felt that when I first started it, but now that I'm more than halfway through, 100%, at least for the first half of the story. I mean, I like this story, but it is very predictable, and that's one of the things that's kind of like, I don't know if this would be a reread for me, because I can, even on the first go around, kind of pretty accurately predict how each story beat is going to go. And maybe that's just me as an author being able to recognize those patterns, and I've read a lot of books too, so you kind of pick up on story structure. But the first half of it is 100% Project Runway meets Mulan, and the second half is straight up fairy tale. It's kind of foreshadowed in the first half of the book, but it is straight up fairy tale. And you've got these tasks you have to complete, and I don't know, I just feel like the tension isn't there as much as I would want it to be, because it is very formulaic. Great stuff for younger readers, especially younger readers who haven't had the chance to read all the books that I've been able to and aren't able to recognize structure yet, don't have that breadth of reading knowledge. So this would be a great way to kind of introduce them to that, and it's a very fun story. I'm enjoying it regardless of how predictable the story structure is. Okay, just wanted to throw that in there because hopefully next time I do one of these, maybe not in part 2, but next month I will be actually finished with it and can give you my final thoughts. The third story I want to talk about is, and I've got to find the picture here because I actually have this book, but I've been listening to it on audiobook here, so it's gonna be this one right here. The Fated Sun Trilogy. This is an utterly fantastic set of books. I found it at a book sale last year, and my goal is to actually read some physical books instead of just listening to them on my Kindle. And so I started reading it, and after a while, I started to become a little bit obsessed and realized that I needed to be listening to this book as well so that I could be enjoying it while I was doing other things. So let me go ahead and find here for you all my Audible version of it and show you what the cover of that looks like. And let's see. Here we go. That's what that looks like. There we go. It's got it in view now. Fated Sun Trilogy, and you can see we've got the veiled and shrouded warriors with their swords. So pretty interesting stuff. This book, or set of books, it started off very slow. It started off with a ton of world building, but it was very rich, and that drew me in. The writing style, the fact that the author knew how to mold the words of the English language is what kept me captivated, because English can be extraordinarily exquisite when used correctly, and this author, C.J. Cherryh, knows how to use the English language, and apparently has a whole bunch of other fantasy books as well that maybe I'll have to check out after I'm finished with the Fated Sun Trilogy, because I'm enjoying this so much. So like I said, slow start. Very sci-fi and a little bit fantasy in that it throws a whole bunch of terms at you, sort of explains them, but is more focused on like the world building of where they are and the world building of a little bit of the language of how they look like, of the backstory. But some of the terms and things that are thrown at you, you're like, well, my head is spinning. I don't know. I don't know how to think about it. But then you get it and you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. And the story itself isn't told so much in action, but in implication. And when I realized that, the tension that it holds you, it's kind of like Ender's Shadow by Orson Scott Card. Ender's Game series, neither here nor there. The Ender's Shadow series, amazing. So it's the same kind of idea of sci-fi with this implication, lots of internal thinking, very, very little dialogue. And this story, it just works so well. So, slow start. But chapter 4, oh, the end of chapter 4 is so good. Throughout the series, and I'm only at book 2 so far, nearing the end of book 2. Throughout the series, there will be these things that are not quite explained. And all of a sudden, the author will, through the character, give you the realization, the understanding of something. And it comes by way of this phrase, or a variation of this phrase, like, we'll take the character Niyun. And then Niyun understood. Or, and then he understood. Or, if we're talking about, let's say, Duncan, it's like, and then the pieces came together in his mind. But the author never explains to you what those pieces are. They just, by giving you the implication that there is something to put together, your mind makes those connections, and it's such smart writing. There is no work done, well, maybe a little bit, but there's no work done for the reader. You have to think about it. You have to immerse yourself in this world. And that's what those first 4 chapters are for. Once you have fully immersed yourself in this world, when the connections are implied that there's something there, then you're like, oh, I do understand. And that's what's been drawing me through. I mean, and there have been some bitter revelations, and I have just been loving every single part of it. Actually, there was a part where I had to finish the one chapter and put it down and go like, okay, I need to maybe not listen to it for a day or two, because while I want to know what happens next, that was a really heavy part of the story, and I just need to rest my mind from it. And I really like to take breaks in between and think about it. But at the same time, it's the whole trilogy is 26 hours long, and I'm already more than halfway through it. So, yeah, good luck me. I'm really enjoying this one so far. So I'm really, really excited to see where it goes next, and I'm really happy reading the books that I have right now, and I can hardly wait to finish these and pick up some new series and find some new authors to love. So like I said, I've got some indie books there, I've got some traditional books there. The last two I mentioned, Spin the Dawn and the Fated Sun Trilogy, are traditionally published, and I'm really enjoying all of them. So that's where we will end part 1, and be on the lookout for part 2 sometime coming soon. Alright, that's all I have for now, you guys. Happy reading. ETJ out.